Hey guys, it's Caitlin. Welcome to my channel. So for today's video, I'm just gonna be doing an end of the year book tag / answering book questions. I got most of these from Kalila D and a few from Sarah Caroli. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. So the first category I have is most disappointing book. And I actually have two. So the first one is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This was so disappointing to me because this was my most anticipated read for 2024. I wanted to read it in 2023, but I didn't get to it. So it was high up on my TBR for this year, and I just hated it. I wasn't connected to the story or the characters at all. I think out of all the characters, I liked Ursula and Rebecca the best, but I didn't really get attached to them. And most of all, I just thought it was gross. There is literally a recommendation on the back of this book saying that only this and the book of Genesis in the Bible should be required reading for the human race. Like, that is just not true. And I do recognize Marquez's writing is phenomenal. That's not why I didn't like this book. I didn't like it because I thought it was gross. Like, truly. So if you don't know what 100 Years of Solitude is about, it's a story of the Buendia family over, I think, 4 generations, and it showcases generational trauma and a cyclical family really well. But I don't like what these male characters get into every single generation. One of the brothers wanted to marry a 6-year-old, so then he waited until she got her period to marry her. Like, why does that need to be what happens? I just don't understand. It's just so gross to me, and I couldn't really get behind any of it. That's my big qualm with 100 Years of Solitude. I think it is really well written. I think most of the content of the story is what I disliked and what I didn't connect to. I can't believe how many awards this book has for what is actually written in it. It's just, I don't know. I did not like this at all, as you could clearly tell. The second book that left me disappointed and a bit angry was Contempt by Alberto Moravia. Now, this book I was really excited about. It's about this young married couple who grow to hate each other. And I was really excited to read about this because I really wanted to dig deep into, the buildup of them starting to hate each other. I didn't really know what was gonna happen at the end. I was like, oh, are they gonna separate? Or are they gonna figure it out? Like, I kind of just wanted to know what was gonna happen. And I think the issue I have with this book is, I don't know if I wanna make this about gender. I don't know. Basically, the story is written by a man and it's told from a man's perspective. And it was very early on where I was able to see what this man did to make his wife not love him anymore. I feel like it's obvious to the reader whether you're a man or a female, but it's very obvious if you're a woman. I could kind of see why she started hating him, and a lot of this book became repetitive, which is not what I disliked about it. I honestly liked the repetitiveness because it really just showed the main character overthinking, freaking out, why doesn't she love me? How can I make her love me again? Then he'll see a thread of hope and be like, oh, I can fix this, or oh no, this is totally doomed. So I actually did like the repetitiveness of this, but what I hated was the ending, because the ending just shows me that this was written by a man. And I don't really want to spoil the ending, but I feel like what happens to this woman is the fate of many women in male-centric books. And that's all I'm gonna say. I hated it. It made me so angry, and I wish we got more of the wife's perspective in this book, because I feel like it would have given it a lot more depth and meaning, but that's just not what happened. Those are the only 2 books that I really disliked and left me disappointed this year. So out of the, I think, 30 books I read so far, that's pretty good. So let's just move on to the next category. Next is best book I read this year, and I actually have two. I couldn't pick. You'll see that's the case with most of these questions. So the first one is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So I actually started this in December 2023 and I finished it in January. So it is the first book I read this year and it is just phenomenal. Jane is such a strong female character. She has really excellent morals and she stands her ground, which I really, really liked. Like, she did not just give in to Mr. Rochester, the love interest. She did not want to risk everything to be with him, which I appreciate. If you want a slow burn, if you want a romance that's just filled with all this tension, like, this is your book. And honestly, I didn't even love Mr. Rochester as the love interest for this, but Jane just really stole the show, as she should, because this book is her book. But it was just phenomenal. I really, really loved it. It's told so beautifully. The language is very descriptive and a bit flowery, but it's not over dramatic, which is nice. Next, how could I not mention The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas? This was just a journey. Like, that's really the only word I can describe it. This is a story, a very long one, about revenge. What I loved about this is I stayed engaged the entire time. Even though this was written in the 1800s, I believe, it is not dated in terms of language, themes, motif. I sincerely feel like this could be published now and it would, you know, it stands the test of time. I truly loved this book and I would recommend it to anyone. I know it's like 1,200 pages, but it goes by so fast and you really fall in love with these characters. The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite characters of all time, and the lengths he'll go to enact revenge on people who wronged him is incredible, truly. The next category is favorite new to me author, because this is not a new author, but first time I've read her, and that is Toni Morrison. I love her. She's so excellent at crafting complex female characters. It's just amazing. In The Bluest Eye, we follow Piccola. She's a young girl. She has it tough. She doesn't have the best family life, and all she wants is blue eyes. She thinks she'll be beautiful if she has blue eyes. And there's a lot about racism, obviously, in this book. There's a lot about self-hatred, a lot of family issues, and what I really liked about this book in particular is Morrison really delves into each character's childhood. She really goes in depth about each one, and you can kind of see how all these experiences led to what Piccola's currently going through. And I just thought it was spectacular. The way she writes is incredible. I read this in I think about a day or two because I was just so engaged with the story. I think The Bluest Eye is the perfect place to start with Toni Morrison. And then after I read this, I had to read another one. So I read Sula, and this is my favorite. This is a story about Sula and Nell. They're childhood best friends. So as they grow up, Nell stays in Ohio, she gets married, and Sula runs off to go be free. And eventually comes back, and it really just shows their complicated relationship through childhood, through adulthood. Sula ends up betraying Nell, and we kind of go through that situation. But ultimately, this book is about good and evil. Who decides what's good? Who decides what's evil? People have different perspectives, and it's just really a reflection on that concept. But I really loved the characters in this one. I thought this was so great. I'm probably gonna read Beloved or Jazz next, so that's gonna be fun. Next, I have a book that surprised me, and that is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. I read this in September this year, and okay, it wasn't a perfect 5-star. I think I gave it 4 stars. But this book surprised me because this is a sci-fi book. I don't read sci-fi. That's not really a genre I'm intrigued by. But I wanted to give this one a chance because I heard really good things, and the author is Eastern European, and I just have a bias for my Russian, Polish, Romanian authors. So I wanted to read this, and I'm so happy I did. I had a few issues and disagreements with the ending, but this book has actually made me want to read more sci-fi, which has never happened in my entire existence. So if you have any sci-fi recommendations, please leave them in the comments below because I have no idea where to go from here. Next category is books I wish I got to. The first one I have is Summer by Edith Wharton. I really wanted to read this in the summer, but I didn't get to it, mostly because 100 Years of Solitude was taking me forever to finish, but I'll stop bashing that book. But yeah, I just wanted to read Summer. I read Ethan Frome earlier last year, and I got this cute little edition because it has both of them. I really wanted to read this book this year. It didn't happen, and it's fine. I was in a pretty big reading slump this year, to be honest, and after The Count of Monte Cristo, I wanted to read no book over 250 pages, so this definitely wasn't gonna happen. That is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I really wanted to read this year, as well as a Dostoevsky. I actually just finished my Dostoevsky, but I really did want to read War and Peace. This has been on my TBR forever. I read Anna Karenina like almost 2 years ago now, so I really wanted to get in another Tolstoy, but it didn't happen. And then the last one is The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I have had this on my TBR now forever, like actually forever. And I never want to pick it up, even though I think I'll really like it once I'm into the story. But it just hasn't happened. So again, maybe next year. Next category is favorite quotes. This one's really exciting. So I'm gonna start with the book that had the fewer quotes first, and that is The Adolescent by Dostoevsky. I just finished this. I actually really loved it and highly recommend. And there's 2 quotes in here that I definitely want to read, so hold please. My friend, to love people as they are is impossible, and yet one must, and therefore do good to them, clenching your feelings, holding your nose, and shutting your eyes. This last is necessary. Endure evil from them, not getting angry with them if possible, remembering that you too are a human being. Isn't that so beautiful? And honestly, so true. And then I have a second quote. But though I did say that, I still looked at him with love. We talked like 2 friends in the highest and fullest sense of the word. He had brought me here to explain, to recount, to justify something to me. And yet, everything was already explained and justified before any words. Whatever I was to hear from him now, the result had already been achieved, and we both happily knew it and looked at each other that way. I really love this quote. It's kind of at a pivotal moment between our main character, Arkady, and his dad, Versalov, who have a really complicated relationship, so I really love this quote. It was really, really great. The next book that just blew me away with its writing was White Walls Collected Stories by Tatiana Tolstaya. I could have definitely tabbed every single page in this book. It is so beautiful. I wish I didn't read all these short stories consecutively. I think I would have appreciated it more if I spread each story out. My favorites in here were Ockerville River and Most Beloved, even though I did not highlight any quotes from those 2 stories. But let me just read you some of these quotes because they're absolutely insane. So I have a few from her short story Sleepwalker in a Fog. I have 2 on 1 page actually, so I'm gonna read those first. A moonbeam, breaking through a darned patch, stabbed him in the eye. The moonlit tablecloth lay on the parquet floor. A silvery garden stood beyond the window. August ignited stars in the dark. It was as if all the snow from all the mountains were cascading onto the garden, the silence and the mute paths. Denisov creaked across the floorboards and stood by the window. He hadn't dreamt about anyone today. And then the second quote, and what kind of nonsense was this anyway? To be tormented by memories of nothing at all. To ask forgiveness from a dead man for something you weren't guilty of in human reckoning. To clutch handfuls of fog. To clutch handfuls of fog. Like, stop. That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I think this one is my favorite. This is absolutely insane. There was no science on earth devoted to studying the fragrance of a garden at night, the moan of sea foam, the dark splendor of the ocean's pearls, and the dull thud of a lonely heart. Like, what? How do you respond to that? How do you let that just sit in your head and not think about it constantly. Oh, this little one, gorgeous. It's from the short story titled Night. The sky is all sprinkled with stars. Alexei Petrovich knows them. Little shining beads hanging all by themselves in the black emptiness. Oh my gosh, another one. I'm sorry, this is just gonna be me reading this whole book to you. From her short story, The Poet and the Muse. Thick, significant poems that recalled expensive, custom-made cakes covered with ornamental inscriptions and triumphant meringue towers. Poems slathered with sticky linguistic icing. Poems containing abrupt, nut-like crunches of clustered sounds and excruciating, indigestible caramel confections of rhyme. That quote is how I describe Tolstoy's writing. It's like a piece of cake. It's just so sweet. Okay, I have two more. Just two more, okay? Uncle Zenya finished writing, drank the coffee that was now available, and looked into the empty cup. And all the coffee grinds of the world, all the daisies, palm lines, pictures and distant stars, and packs of cards with frowning kings and arrogant knaves had already fallen into the simple contour of a tombstone, trustingly revealing to Uncle Zenya his imminent fate. But he couldn't read it, for this knowledge was not given to him. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. And then in her last story titled See the Other Side, because if heaven isn't for us, then who's it for? I'd like to know. Are there really others, special people, people who are noticeably better than us ordinary, statistically average souls? No, there aren't any. So I may have to plod across those green meadows in a herd of American tourists, disgruntled because everything is so ancient and small scale. And if that's the case, then that means heaven is awful and boring, which by definition shouldn't be true. Everything in heaven should be utterly sublime. Yeah, so go read White Walls. It'll change your life. Not consecutively though. Read one story at a time. You'll get more out of it, I promise. Last category is unpopular book I loved and vice versa. The unpopular book that I loved was The Adolescent by Dostoevsky. I feel like this is his least read and least highly rated book out of his major works, and I think the reason is because, at least for me, this did not have a lasting impact on me like Crime and Punishment or Demons did. I think there are some great lessons in here about growing up in a tumultuous household and how that affects you into adulthood and the choices that you make in either repairing those relationships or leaving them to rot. I thought this was excellent, and honestly I didn't expect to like it because I didn't see great reviews. But I truly love this book. I thought it was so fun, so fast-paced for a Dostoevsky, and it was definitely one of the easier Dostoevskys to read. So I love this book. I stand by it. I gave it 5 stars. I'm so happy I read this. So the other book for this category, which is a popular book that I didn't like, is Funny Story by Emily Henry. And just by this video, I'm sure you can tell that's not really the type of book I read. But I do like throwing in some more modern books because it's not always fun to read classics back to back. So I wanted to read Funny Story by Emily Henry. It had such great reviews. It came out in 2024. It's a love story between 2 characters. So basically what happens is both of these characters are in relationships, they get broken up with, and then they end up living together and end up getting together. It is kind of a slow burn, but not really. I don't really even know how to describe this book. I just feel like so much kept happening, and I will say that this book kept me really engaged. It is so fast paced. I liked our main character Daphne the most. And I do want to say that this book is just not about the love story. She has a strained relationship with her dad. It's also about friendship. We have a great friendship in here between our main character and another character that she works with. I love their friendship. So there were some great things in here, but I just like, I don't know, maybe I just shouldn't read romance books. It was good, I guess. Like, it just, I know it didn't leave a lasting impression on me. I wasn't head over heels for these characters. And honestly, I thought some of the conflicts in here were just kind of like childish. Like, both of these characters are in their early 30s. It could have been told a lot better. It wasn't bad, but just, I don't know, just based on how people were talking about this book, I was like, okay, maybe this is gonna be the modern romance book that I love, but it just wasn't. So it wasn't bad. And if you just want something quick and easy to read and fun, like I think this would be a good pick for you. But it just, I don't know, it just didn't hit for me. So those are all the categories for this video. I did want to talk about my Goodreads reading goal, which I did not meet. I'm currently 30 books in, but I'm not gonna hit it. My goal was 50 because the year before I read 50, and then the year before that I read 40. So I won't be hitting my Goodreads goal, but honestly, that's fine. I read a good amount of books this year, and I was in a pretty big reading slump through most of the spring and summer. So it's fine. It is what it is. I don't know if I'm gonna set a reading goal for 2025. I'm definitely back into reading right now. Literally all I wanna do is read. I'm just like running through books. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment down below your answers to these questions or categories down below. I'd love to know. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.